Have you ever wondered why some people can speak two simple words and their entire reality shifts, while others can repeat the same words 1,000 times and nothing changes? What if I told you that the difference has nothing to do with the words themselves, but everything to do with the consciousness behind them? A consciousness so profound that when Jesus spoke these two words, he could heal the sick, transform matter, and demonstrate a power that seemed to defy the very laws of nature. Those two words are I am. But here's what most people miss. When you say I am in your daily life, whether it's I am tired, I am struggling, or even I am blessed, you're doing far more than making a simple statement. You're actually declaring your identity at the deepest spiritual level. You're making a claim about who and what you truly are. And this claim, whether you realize it or not, is shaping your entire experience of reality right now, in this very moment. Has this ever happened to you? You've said affirmations, you've prayed, you've tried to think positively, yet the same challenges keep appearing in your life, like an endless loop. What if the real issue isn't that your prayers aren't working, but that you've been fundamentally misunderstanding what happens when you say I am? What if you've been accidentally using the most powerful creative force in the universe to reinforce the very limitations you're trying to escape? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, when Jesus declared, I am the way, the truth, and the life, he wasn't being poetic. He wasn't making a religious claim or trying to sound mystical. He was revealing something that changes everything once you truly grasp it. He wasn't identifying with his body, his personality, or even his human life. He was declaring that the presence of God was his only identity, not partially, not symbolically, completely. This wasn't just a nice spiritual idea. It was a demonstrable principle that altered physical reality. And here's where it gets revolutionary. Jesus wasn't claiming something special just for himself. He was showing us the truth of what we all are beneath the layers of false identity we've accumulated throughout our lives. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. It's certainly transformed my understanding completely. Most of us have been taught that God is somewhere out there, separate from us, and that we need to reach for this divine presence through prayer, ritual, or spiritual practice. We've spent years building bridges to cross a gap that, in truth, never actually existed. But what if the divine presence isn't something distant you need to connect with? What if it's the very I speaking through you right now? What if every time you say I am with reverent awareness, not casually, not unconsciously, but with full recognition of what you're actually declaring, you're not describing yourself, but invoking the infinite? Think about the spiritual journey most of us have been on. We've been taught from childhood to look up when we pray, to reach outward when we seek God, to believe that the divine is somewhere beyond us, watching, judging, perhaps listening if we're worthy enough. This conditioning runs deep. We've spent years, maybe lifetimes, trying to bridge what we believed was an impossible distance between our small human selves and the infinite power of the universe. But here's the hidden truth that changes everything. That gap never existed. It was always an illusion, a case of mistaken identity so profound that it's shaped every prayer you've ever uttered, every moment of desperation when you cried out for help, every instance when you felt alone and separate from the source of all life. The revelation that Joel Goldsmith uncovered through decades of spiritual practice is almost too simple to believe at first. God isn't something outside you that you need to connect with. God is the very I that you are, not metaphorically, not symbolically. Actually, this understanding creates a complete transformation in how you experience every single moment of your life. Because if this is true, and I'm going to show you why it is, then you've been making declarations about your identity all day long, without realizing the power behind them. Every time you've said, "I'm tired," you weren't just describing how you felt. You were attaching the infinite presence that you truly are to a temporary condition. Every time you've said, "I am broke," or "I am sick," or "I am not enough," you've been identifying the eternal with the temporary, the infinite with the finite. Think about the impact of this for a moment. When you say "I am" followed by anything, you're not speaking as a separate person describing their circumstances. You're speaking as consciousness itself, making a declaration about what the infinite is experiencing through this particular form. The words that follow "I am" become the lens through which your entire reality is filtered. This isn't about positive thinking or trying to manifest things through affirmations. This is about understanding that you've been using the most powerful creative principle in existence without knowing what you were actually doing. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because what happens next is where most people experience their biggest breakthrough. When you start to recognize that every casual use of "I am" is a spiritual declaration, you begin to see the hidden pattern behind why your life looks the way it does. You realize that you've been claiming your limitations as your identity, not because you wanted to, but because you didn't. Understand the spiritual significance of these two words. Your mindset wasn't just affecting your thoughts, it was literally defining who you believed yourself to be at the most fundamental level. And here's where the journey gets truly fascinating. Once you understand this, you can't unhear it. Every time you're about to say, "I am frustrated" or "I am overwhelmed," you'll pause. You'll feel something shift inside, because you'll know that you're about to identify the infinite with a passing emotion, and suddenly you'll have a choice you never knew existed before. The behind-the-scenes truth of your entire spiritual life is this: you've had access to unlimited power all along, but you've been using it to reinforce exactly what you didn't want. Write in the comments, "I'm beginning to see this," if this revelation is starting to shift something in how you understand your own daily language. What makes Jesus' approach so revolutionary becomes crystal clear when you look at exactly how he used these two words. He never, not once, said, "I am sick," or "I am lacking," or "I am struggling." Every single time he spoke "I am," he attached it only to eternal truth. "I am the resurrection and the life. I am the light of the world. I am the way, the truth, and the life." These weren't poetic expressions or religious metaphors meant to sound impressive. He was demonstrating the precise principle of identification with the infinite rather than with temporary conditions. This distinction is absolutely crucial to understand because it reveals the mechanics behind why his consciousness could actually transform physical reality. When you identify with what is eternal and unchanging, you're not trying to make something happen. You're recognizing what already is. Jesus wasn't creating light or manufacturing life or building a way forward. He was claiming his identity as these things, and reality had no choice but to reflect that consciousness. Now contrast that with how we typically use these same words. "I am exhausted. I am stressed. I am not good enough. I am running out of time." With each declaration, we're doing something that Jesus never did. We're identifying the infinite presence of our true being with temporary, limited conditions. We're making a claim that the I at the center of our existence is somehow bound by circumstances, emotions, or external situations. And this single mistake is the hidden source of virtually all human suffering. Let me be clear about something that most spiritual teachings miss. It's not the circumstances themselves that cause your deepest pain. It's not the illness, the financial challenge, or the difficult relationship. The real suffering comes from what you claim "I am" is in relationship to those circumstances. When you say "I am sick," you've just declared that your essential identity, the infinite consciousness expressing as you, is bound by a condition in the body. You've taken what is temporary and made it your truth. You've confused the symptom with yourself. This mindset trap operates behind the scenes of every moment of suffering. Think about your own journey and the times when you felt most trapped, most hopeless, most convinced that things couldn't change. If you examine those moments honestly, you'll find that the real crisis wasn't the external situation. It was the identity crisis. You were claiming, "I am failing, I am alone, I am powerless." Each declaration reinforced the illusion that your essential nature could be limited by what was happening in your life. If these insights resonated with something deep inside you, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. I regularly explore practical spiritual principles that bridge ancient wisdom with your everyday life, content that actually helps you transform, not just consume. The transformation that becomes possible when you recognize this pattern is profound, because once you see that you've been misidentifying yourself with conditions, you have a decision to make in every moment. Will you continue to claim limitation as your identity, or will you follow the example Jesus demonstrated, using "I am" only to declare what is eternally true about your being? This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about recognizing the difference between what you are experiencing and who you are at the deepest level. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding this intellectually is just the beginning. The real revelation comes when you start to apply this in the actual circumstances of your daily life, and that's where most people discover something that changes their entire relationship with challenges. If you've ever caught yourself saying "I am," followed by something you don't actually want to be true, drop "I recognize this pattern" in the comments below. Here's what most people find shocking when they first encounter this truth: the "I am" you're searching for. Through meditation, prayer, spiritual practice, and years of seeking isn't something you need to develop or create. It already is. It has always been. The entire journey isn't about becoming enlightened or achieving some elevated spiritual state. It's about stopping the false identification with what you are not. This revelation completely transforms your relationship with spiritual growth. You're not climbing a mountain to reach God. You're not accumulating wisdom or virtue to become worthy of divine presence. You're simply recognizing what has been true about you since before you were born, what remains true right now, and what will be true long after this body returns to dust. The infinite consciousness that speaks through you when you say "I" is already complete, already whole, already perfect. The practical impact of this understanding becomes most obvious when you face a health challenge. Let's say you wake up with symptoms, with pain, with a diagnosis that frightens you. The automatic response, the one we've all been conditioned to have, is to immediately claim it as identity. "I am sick and I need healing." But watch what happens in that moment. The instant you say, "I am sick," you've just declared that the infinite presence, the true I of your being, is bound by a condition in matter. You've confused the eternal with the temporary. The hidden truth behind all healing is this: the I that you are cannot be sick. It's impossible, because that I is infinite. Spirit, unchanging consciousness, the presence of life itself. The body may be showing symptoms, absolutely. There may be pain, discomfort, dysfunction in the physical form. But that's not the I. That's not your identity. When you rest in this knowing, not by fighting the symptoms, not by forcing yourself to believe something you don't, but by genuinely recognizing the distinction between what you are and what the body is experiencing, healing happens naturally. This isn't about denying the physical experience or pretending you don't see the symptoms. It's about knowing where your true identity lies. The transformation occurs not through struggle, not through willpower, not through desperate prayers begging for intervention. It happens through recognition. When consciousness knows itself as whole, when the I remembers it cannot be limited by conditions, the body aligns with that truth because it has no choice. It's the outward expression of consciousness. Think about the countless hours you may have spent trying to heal yourself, trying to fix what seemed broken, trying to become whole when wholeness was your nature all along. Every technique, every method, every practice was ultimately trying to change the effect while misunderstanding the cause. The cause was never in the body. It was in identification, in claiming I am, followed by the condition instead of I am, as the infinite presence observing the condition without being defined by it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what I'm about to share shows you exactly how people have applied this understanding to dissolve seemingly impossible situations, and the results might challenge everything you thought you knew about healing. Type, "I am more than this body" in the comments if this distinction is becoming clear to you. There's a fundamental difference between trying to do something and recognizing what already is. And this distinction is where most spiritual seekers get lost. We've been trained to think that spiritual growth requires action, visualizations, affirmations, manifestation techniques, elaborate rituals. We approach God like a distant resource we need to extract something from through the right combination of effort and worthiness. But what Jesus demonstrated through I am is something far more powerful and infinitely simpler, a state of being that requires no doing whatsoever. You're not trying to get things from God. You're realizing that God is already the substance of your being, expressing as your experience right now. This shift from action to recognition changes everything because it removes the exhausting cycle of seeking, striving, and wondering if you're doing enough. Recognition simply sees what is true. It doesn't create truth. It acknowledges it. Let me share a story that illustrates the profound impact of this understanding. A woman named Margaret had lived with chronic pain for 7 years. She'd tried every treatment, consulted countless specialists, explored alternative therapies, and nothing brought lasting relief. The medical tests showed nothing wrong, yet the pain persisted, dominating every aspect of her daily life. When she finally met Joel Goldsmith, she expected him to pray for her, to do some spiritual treatment, to use his consciousness to heal her condition. If this shifted your perspective even slightly, a simple like on this video helps others who are searching for this exact message find their way here. It's a small gesture that creates a big ripple, but he did none of that. Instead, he asked her a question that seemed almost absurd in its simplicity. Who is the I that says, "I am in pain"? She started to answer, but he interrupted her. Is the I am you speak of capable of pain? Can infinite spirit hurt? Can God suffer? Margaret sat there, confused at first, maybe even frustrated. Here she was, desperate for relief, and he was asking philosophical questions. But Joel had her sit in silence with these questions, not to find an intellectual answer, but to let consciousness reveal the truth beneath the appearance. For nearly 20 minutes she sat there, and then something shifted. Not in her body, in her awareness. She suddenly realized that she'd been making a fundamental error of identification. She'd been claiming that her true self, the I am at the center of her being, was in pain. But infinite consciousness can't experience pain. The sensations were happening in the body, yes, but they weren't happening to the I she truly was. She'd been confusing the experience with the experiencer, the symptom with her identity. The transformation that followed wasn't immediate, but it was inevitable. Within 3 weeks, the pain began to diminish. Within 2 months, it was completely gone. Not because she fought against it, not because someone healed her from the outside, but because she stopped claiming it as her identity. The moment she recognized the distinction, Between the I am and the bodily condition, the condition lost its power because it was no longer being reinforced by consciousness identifying with it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because Margaret's journey reveals something crucial about how this principle operates behind the scenes of our everyday challenges, whether they involve health, relationships, finances, or any other area where we feel stuck. If this story resonates with something you've experienced or are experiencing now, write "I see the difference" in the comments. What Margaret discovered applies to every area of life, not just physical healing. Consider a man named Robert, whose business was collapsing around him. Every morning, he'd wake up consumed by the same thought pattern. I am failing. I am losing everything. I am watching my dreams die. His prayers had become desperate pleas, begging God to send customers, to provide a miracle, to rescue him from disaster. Behind the scenes of all, this struggle was the same fundamental error. He was claiming lack as his identity. When Robert heard Joel Goldsmith speak about "I am," something clicked. He realized that every time he said "I am failing," he wasn't just describing his business situation. He was making a declaration about his essential nature. He was attaching infinite consciousness to temporary conditions, identifying the unlimited with limitation. This revelation didn't immediately change his circumstances, but it did change his approach completely. He began a simple daily practice. Every morning, before opening his laptop, before checking numbers or reading emails, before letting the external situation flood his awareness, he would sit quietly and recognize, "I am is the abundance of God. I am is infinite resource. I am is divine intelligence expressing." Not as an affirmation trying to make something true, but as a recognition of what already was true beneath all appearances. The transformation wasn't instant. It took 4 months. But gradually, something shifted in his consciousness that had direct impact on his external reality. Ideas began to flow that he hadn't been able to access when operating from fear and lack. Connections appeared with people who could genuinely help. Opportunities opened that had been invisible to him when his entire focus was on survival and desperation. His business didn't just survive, it evolved into something more aligned with his actual purpose, something he couldn't have planned or forced into being through human effort alone. The hidden principle behind both Margaret's and Robert's breakthroughs is the same. Consciousness shift precedes condition shift. When you stop identifying the "I am" with the problem loses its anchor in your experience. This brings us to something Joel taught that becomes invaluable during moments of acute crisis, something he called the pause. When fear grips you, when circumstances feel overwhelming, when pain or panic or desperation floods your awareness, you pause everything. You don't react. You don't immediately try to solve or fix or struggle. You don't let the momentum of fear carry you into frantic action. Instead, you consciously return to the "I am." In that pause, you ask yourself one question: what is the truth of my being right now? Not what appears to be true, not what feels true, but what is eternally true regardless of circumstances. And the answer is always the same. I am is the presence of God, untouched by any condition, unlimited by any appearance, whole regardless of what the body shows, abundant regardless of what the bank account shows, safe regardless of what the situation looks like. This isn't denial of circumstances, it's recognition of identity. The pause creates space between the stimulus and your response. And in that space, truth can emerge and guide your decisions from a completely different level of consciousness. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding when and how to use the pause can be the difference between remaining trapped in a problem and experiencing genuine breakthrough. Type "I'm learning to pause" in the comments if this practice is starting to make sense in your own journey. The pause naturally leads us to one of the most liberating revelations in this entire understanding, the concept of impersonal supply. We've been conditioned our entire lives to believe that abundance comes from specific sources outside ourselves, your job, your clients, your investments, your inheritance, even the people in your life. This belief creates constant anxiety because what if those sources disappear? What if the job ends? What if the client leaves? What if the market crashes? Your entire sense of security becomes dependent on external channels that you can't fully control. But when you truly grasp that I am is infinite supply, the entire foundation of your relationship with abundance shifts. Your employer is not your source. Your business is not your source. Your investments are not your source. These are merely channels through which supply flows. But the source itself is the I am at the center of your being, infinite, inexhaustible, always present. The channels can change, and they often do. One stream of income may dry up completely, while 3 others open in unexpected ways. But the source never diminishes because it isn't dependent on external conditions. Think about the freedom in this understanding. You're no longer at the mercy of circumstances or other people's decisions about your value. The infinite supply expressing as you doesn't negotiate, doesn't run out, doesn't require you to prove yourself worthy. It simply is. This doesn't mean you become passive or stop working. It means you work from wholeness rather than from need, from overflow rather than from desperation. The impact on your daily decisions becomes profound when you're no longer operating from fear of lack. Now here's where I need to be completely honest with you about something most spiritual teachers won't tell you. Knowing this truth intellectually and actually living it consistently are entirely different experiences. You're going to have moments, maybe many moments, where you completely forget everything I'm sharing with you today. Fear will overwhelm the truth. Circumstances will seem so immediate, so pressing, so undeniably real that I am consciousness will feel like wishful thinking or spiritual fantasy. This is normal. This is part of the journey. Even people who've practiced this for years still have moments where they slip back into identifying with conditions. You might wake up one morning, look at your bank account or your health situation or your relationship problems, and every cell in your body will scream that this understanding doesn't work, that you need to panic, that you need to return to the old way of struggling and forcing and trying to control outcomes through human effort alone. Here's the hidden truth behind this challenge. Spiritual realization works in consciousness first, not in conditions. Sometimes the inner shift happens quickly and outer evidence follows almost immediately. Sometimes, and this is what tests people the most, the inner work takes weeks or even months of consistent practice before you see any visible change in your circumstances. Your job during that time isn't to make things happen or to force results. Your job is to remain faithful to the truth you've recognized, regardless of what appearances are telling you. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because what happens during those challenging times when nothing seems to be changing is actually where the most profound transformation occurs, and understanding this process can mean the difference between giving up and breaking through. If you've experienced that gap between knowing something spiritually and actually living it, write, "I'm in the process," in the comments. This understanding of I am transforms not just your relationship with circumstances, but your relationships with people in ways you might not expect. Most relationship problems, whether romantic, familial, or professional, come from the same root issue, seeking completion in another person. You feel incomplete, so you look for someone to fill the emptiness. You feel unloved, so you need someone to validate your worth. You feel lonely, so you desperately grasp for connection. But every relationship built on this foundation is doomed to disappoint because you're asking another human being to be your source of wholeness, and no person can carry that impossible burden. When you recognize that I am is infinite love, not that you need love or that you're searching for love, but that the very nature of your being is love itself, the entire dynamic shifts. You're no longer seeking love from outside yourself. You're expressing the love you are. You're not entering relationships from emptiness, hoping to be filled. You're coming from fullness, sharing wholeness rather than trading neediness. The impact on your relationships becomes immediate because you stop making impossible demands on people and start experiencing them as they actually are rather than as what you need them to be. This doesn't mean you don't desire partnership or deep connection. It means you desire it from a completely different place, from completion rather than from lack, from abundance rather than from desperation. The hidden truth is that healthy relationships can only exist between two people who already know themselves as whole. Otherwise, you're not in relationship. You're in mutual rescue operation, and those always eventually collapse under their own weight. But here's where this entire understanding reaches its ultimate expression. I am consciousness isn't something you practice during meditation sessions or invoke only when problems arise. It's meant to become your constant state of being, the foundation of every moment of your life. You wake in the morning as I am. You walk through your day as I am. You work as I am. You love as I am. You face challenges as I am. You rest at night as I am. Every single experience becomes the infinite expressing in finite form. Consciousness appearing as the particular circumstances of your life. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey of consistent recognition, of returning again and again to truth, whenever you find yourself slipping into false identification. But gradually, imperceptibly at first, your entire experience of being human shifts. You're no longer a limited person trying to become spiritual, struggling to reach God, hoping to eventually become enlightened. Your spirit appearing as person, the infinite expressing in this particular form, consciousness experiencing itself through these specific circumstances. The practical application of this starts right now, in whatever you're facing today. Whatever challenge or fear or need is pressing on you in this moment, you can pause. You can stop trying to solve it through human effort and manipulation. You can recognize that I am is the only presence and power, that your true identity is untouched by the appearance, that the infinite expressing as you already contains the resolution. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's one final revelation that brings everything together and shows you exactly how to make this shift from intellectual understanding to lived experience in a way that actually sticks. If this understanding is beginning to feel less like theory and more like something you can actually live, write "This is becoming real" in the comments. You know, if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I want you to know that says something about where you are in your own spiritual awakening. Most people scroll past content like this because they're not ready to hear it, or because something in them resists the simplicity of this truth. But you're still here, which means something in you recognizes this understanding, maybe not fully yet, but enough to keep listening, enough to stay open. If these insights have shifted something in how you see yourself and your relationship with the divine, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. I create content like this regularly, exploring practical spiritual principles that you can actually apply in your daily life, not just beautiful ideas that sound nice, but leave you wondering what to do with them on a Tuesday afternoon when everything feels overwhelming. And if you made it all the way to the end, leave a comment saying, "This was meant for me, so I know who's walking this path alongside me." It genuinely helps me understand who's here and what resonates with you. Giving this video a like also helps other seekers discover this message, people who might be searching for exactly what you just heard, who need this. understanding right now in their journey. It's a simple way to extend what you've received here. And listen, there's a video right here that takes this understanding even deeper, exploring how to apply I am consciousness to specific challenges you're facing right now. Click and continue with me over there. I think you'll find it's exactly what comes next on this journey.